What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Over the weekend, we did have a new game system announced, a handheld, and this one in particular is pretty interesting because it's the successor to a system that people have been waiting to hear about for quite some time, and we're going to go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony once again running into some issues when it comes to the live service sector, with one game maybe being a bit further out than we were expecting. And Phil Spencer, once again, goes on another interview, and this time creating waves with some of his sound bites and quotes that again lean into the idea of Microsoft, well, just being third party. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button down below. And we're gonna start today with Rainbow Six Siege, a game that's been out for more than 9 years now, and it's sort of in this phase of, hey, are we gonna get any kind of sequel or successor to this game? Well, the answer is kind of. We actually had a new teaser trailer you can see that was shown as part of an invitational that happened over the weekend. And as this was going on, we at least get a glimpse, I guess, at like an updated version of this game. It's Rainbow Six Siege X, and after this, we did have some of the developers actually take the stage here at the Invitational, saying it is not Siege 2, it's not another update, it's a major evolution. We're expanding and reinforcing the very foundation of Siege to ensure it remains the pinnacle of tactical PvP first-person shooters. This means major graphical and audio upgrades, refined game feel, and new ways to enjoy the game, all while staying true to what makes the core of Siege so special. And it is such a significant leap forward that we can't possibly do it justice here at the 6th Invitational. So we'll see apparently like full gameplay premiere on March 13th in Atlanta. Sounds like it's... So this is the weird thing about the live service stuff. It's like we don't necessarily want to try to split the core audience by making a sequel or a new Rainbow Six game if people just want to play Siege. So let's just build on top of that. So it's a sequel, but not a sequel. Apparently it's just going to be a better version of it, and that's fine because Siege definitely was starting to feel like it was almost a decade old. So we'll see what this is all about. As of now, we just have that teaser and that very weird explanation. So I guess on March 13th, we'll get a better look at Rainbow Six Siege X. Also, the PlayStation Portal has quietly been getting more and more games enabled for its cloud streaming. That being, you don't need your own PlayStation 5 console to remote play from. You can just play from Sony's servers in the cloud. And when I initially checked it out, it's a cool idea. It is. I don't think it's the only or the best way really to experience a lot of these games at all. And I don't even know if I would recommend going out and buying a PlayStation Portal to just stream games, because you still need to pay for PlayStation Plus Premium. And with that in the Portal, you're almost to the price of a PS5. Actually, a refurbished PS5 would technically be a little cheaper than like the yearly charge. Either way, the list now is over 200 games, which is quite impressive. So if you have a PlayStation Portal and you've been curious about the cloud streaming stuff and you have Premium, might as well fire it up just to see what you think, because in some cases, depending on where you are in the world, if you're traveling with it, might make more sense to tap into the server and cloud stream as opposed to remote play. And it also just shows that Sony seems to be taking this more and more seriously as they go along. The idea that you don't need a PS5 to play PS5 games, although you still need to buy a device from them, and maybe sometime in the future, it won't just be cloud streaming, it'll be a portable device that can play them natively. Come on, Sony, we need that successor to the Vita. Maybe 2027 or 2028, but something tells me, based on what they're doing here with the Portal, I think that's in the cards. Oh, and it looks like Astrobot got another W over the weekend. We can see this is posted up, and this is from the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. The 28th Annual DICE Awards Game of the Year win goes to Astrobot. Congratulations, Team Asobi. We had the director take the stage here in his speech after he's accepting the awards once again, thanking Nintendo, like 65 minus 1. What's that at? 64. So yeah, obviously big fans of Mario 64 over there, but yeah, it's just Astrobot continuing to sweep through a majority of the Game of the Year awards, and hey, it's just a really good game. So I still see people at times ask in the comments, should I check out Astrobot? Yes, you should. If you already have a PS5, I don't know what you're waiting for. Go pick the game up and just experience I mean, a really, really good 3D platformer. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with a new game system, a new handheld that's been announced. And this was way of, you can see on their official account, we have Retroid. And this is the Retroid Pocket, what looks to be the Flip 2. It's directly there in the middle. There's also a system kind of off to the right that's in the shadows and obscured a bit there. We'll get to that in a moment, but obviously the big attention getter here is the GameCube themed handheld in the middle. Now it does appear to have that clamshell design, and this would be the Flip 2, because we did have the original Flip, and it was a strange device. I mean, it had a lot that they had to work on there, like the joysticks, for example. They weren't recessed or anything. They basically floated on top of the plastic. So think of the 3DS joystick, or the PSP. Actually, that might be a better example, where it kind of slid around. Well, they had two of them, like directly in the middle, right? And it wasn't great for most games that it was trying to emulate, because many of those games assumed you had the standard kind of analog stick. Now, in this case, it looks like they have analog sticks that would be similar to like a Switch, for example, or many of the other Retroid pockets that are out there on the market. This, though, of course, having that clamshell design, it also being a wider base overall, it has a better aspect ratio for, say, the PlayStation 2, GameCube, or Xbox in widescreen. And that's primarily what you'd be buying this for, I assume. I say I assume because we don't have the specifications for this, but most likely we're going to see maybe Retroid Pocket 5 specs, which was a Snapdragon 865, 8 gigabytes of RAM. So it would be equipped to play PS2, GameCube, Dreamcast, everything there and then below. And you could probably also emulate, I guess, Switch, like in Wii U, but I think I'd mostly be targeting GameCube and PS2. But the screen here, we're still also trying to figure out, is this an OLED setup here, like we've seen with some of the other Retroid Pocket devices? But I do, of course, like the color scheme, them leaning into the GameCube setup here, the dual speakers at the bottom, and just the overall clamshell design. I just think it's a better setup for some of these more premium priced devices. I say premium price, this will most likely be just north, I assume, again, of $200, similar to that Retroid Pocket 5. Might even be like $250, although you get up to that $300 range, then you start looking at some of the other devices that are more capable, we'll say, than this. But next to that, we can see is another device it's hard to see, right? Clearly they're doing this on purpose. We can kind of zoom in here, but you can see it's sort of in the shadows. It also has sort of that wave covering up most of it, which again, I assume is to cover any kind of control scheme or stuff here. I mean, the D-pad looks to me kind of reminiscent of what you'd see on like a PS2 or even like a DualSense, but like the PlayStation D-pad, maybe PSP-esque. But then the form factor is kind of like a DMG Game Boy, and it doesn't seem like there's a hinge. So I don't know, maybe just an updated DMG style. So it could still be maybe this flip setup, just different right there, like in that Game Boy setup. So I don't know, we'll have to see more information about that. But I saw the Flip 2, got really excited because this is what I'd be looking for. However, I also understand some disappointment because you see this and you go, oh, that'd be really cool with two screens. And I agree. If you could have two screens here and it be properly priced, again, I don't think it could be like $400 or $500, and we already do have dual screen setups for these different handhelds, and they get near $800 or something. They'd have to figure out that price point. So if you have two screens, though, great for DS emulation, 3DS emulation. So I understand the want for that, but I think at least the setup here makes a lot of sense for a handheld that you want to be able to take care of on the go, since it just closes up and that whole screen's protected. This is set up seemingly to launch in spring, so we'll keep an eye on this to see price point, specifications, and if they have any more information about that other mystery handheld that's just off to the side. Next up, let's talk about Phil Spencer and his latest interview, because some of the quotes and answers he had definitely made the rounds, and this was an Xbox era, which they also went ahead and transcribed most of the answers in that interview to make it a little easier here, but I will leave a link to the entire video where they have the back and forth with Phil Spencer down below in the sources if you just kind of want to listen in there. But we can start here, and this was when Phil Spencer was asked about PlayStation 5 and Switch logos, which I mean, we saw the PS5 logo just appear in their shows. I assume the Nintendo logo will start to appear a bit more when the Switch 2 is fully unveiled in April. But he says, I just want to be transparent with people for shipping on Nintendo Switch. We're going to put that for shipping on PlayStation, on Steam. People should know the storefronts where they can get our games. But I want people to be able to experience our Xbox community in our games and everything we have to offer on every screen we can. And obviously, not every screen is equal. Yeah, like there's certain things we can't do on the other closed platforms that we can do on open platforms. Cloud, it's different, but games should be the thing that we're focused on, and the strategy that we have allows us to do big games while also supporting our native platform from hardware to the platform and services that we have, and that's going to be our approach. I know it's not what everybody else is doing, but I just believe games should be the thing that's at the forefront. Maybe it's because of how I've grown up in the industry. I came from building games, but I think the games are the things that I see growing in their strength in what we're doing, and it's because more people can play. So yeah, I'm just trying to be open and transparent with people, and this is still really hard for people to wrap their head around because, I mean, really, it is kind of strange, you know, to see you're watching an Xbox showcase, the developer direct, whatever. Okay, cool, that looks great. Doom. Oh, there's a PlayStation logo in an Xbox show. And it's weird because Sony doesn't do that and Nintendo does do that. You'll have to look up later if that game they showed during their presentation is multi-platform. But as we see with Microsoft, they don't really seem to care. Like the focus is clearly being pulled away from just their console, their box. It still exists. They still provide it. They'll manufacture it, but it's not like the be-all end-all, the thing that's at the center. The thing that's at the center is them just trying to sell software. And let's face it, with how the Xbox is selling right now, it's getting harder and harder to justify keeping those games specific to that one console, even alongside of PC. So you put it on something like PlayStation that is actually sitting right there alongside the PS4, and Nintendo that's gone crazy with their console sales and seemingly will have a massive launch with the Switch 2, and Microsoft is seeing dollar signs. Which leads into the other question that was asked, that being about the 70% of the sale for funding future titles. Well, some are talking about 30%. Of course, that gets the cut for, say, Sony or Nintendo. I mean, Microsoft is still pulling in revenue here, saying, I would love to make all of the money for all of the games that we ship, right? Like, obviously, we want to make more on our own platform. It's one of the reasons that investing in our own platform is important, but there are people, whether it's their libraries on a PlayStation or Nintendo, whether it's they like the controller better, they just like the games that are there. And I don't want to then look at that and say, well, there's no way that we should be able to build a business there. Find fans of our franchises there. I'm not trying to move them all over to Xbox anymore. People were also invested in where our games are. Let's just allow more people to play, and yes, the 70% that we make on games on other platforms is helpful to us being able to build great portfolios like we showed at the Dev Direct, and I hope this will continue to show through the rest of the year. So the part here clearly that stuck out to people was, I'm not trying to move them to Xbox anymore, because yes, there was a time where they were trying to move people to Xbox. I mean, look at all of like the original Xbox, the 360, most of the Xbox One, but then towards the end of the Xbox One, it seemed obvious that they were starting to kind of move away from that a bit. But them saying, hey, if we continue to pull money in, revenue in from other platforms, while mostly having Game Pass as the core benefit along with the hardware, the OS, the dashboard, the library that you've built up, the achievements that you love to get throughout games, that's going to be their strategy. And again, it's strange to us because you feel like you want to sell as many consoles as possible. I kind of feel like Microsoft is fine selling 20 to 30 million maybe, like lifetime for a console they release, because then they're also going to leverage other platforms. But what happens if they get down to 5 or 10 million? Is it still worth building them? That's the big question. And when asked kind of about the idea of the console going away, and that's why people are concerned, Phil didn't really answer outright. He didn't say, oh yeah, well here's our plan, and we're definitely gonna do that. He didn't really say that. He kind of hedged a bit, sort of gave a roundabout answer and then moved on. So I get why people are concerned about the idea that, hey, if Microsoft just stopped doing consoles and went third party, what does that mean for our library of games that we've built up? Honestly, I don't know. That's the biggest question. Mike Ybarra brought up the idea of there being some sort of license transfer system that's figured out between Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. Good luck on that one, but I don't know. At this point, Microsoft would have to maybe attach it to Windows and just keep it going through your Windows ID login. that's for them to figure out. So at least for now, they're still making consoles. They're still going to make apparently a next generation device or a set of devices. And I guess we'll reconvene after or even halfway through that generation, depending on how they're doing. Next up, let's talk about Sony and their live service endeavors, because it's definitely been a struggle. Helldivers 2 worked out great. Most of everything else has been rough. And Fairgames is one that, honestly, I've been asking a couple of times now, hey, when are we going to see that again? Well, State of Play is coming up. Surely Fairgames will be there. And then it wasn't at this most recent one. Well, it seems that Jeff Grubb gave us a little bit of insight here. We can see this posted up. This is by Eurogamer transcribing it. This, however, was mentioned by Jeff over on his podcast, saying, no Fairgames this year. Fairgames, as far as I'm aware, has been pushed to 2026. All right, well, less and less confidence as we go along in this one. I mean, you look at the initial showing of it, and it's very clear it didn't exactly do well with the target audience. You look on YouTube, I know like to dislikes isn't the be-all, end-all. There's plenty of things that gets a bunch of dislikes but then sells stupid copies like Call of Duty. Even the worst Call of Duty year still ended up topping the MPD charts, right? But in this case, if you look at Fairgames, it's like... it's like 96% dislikes. It's something crazy. So I don't know if they themselves looked at the reception and said, hold on, let's back up a bit. Let's see what we can figure out here, whether it's the look, the premise, maybe even the gameplay loop needed some refinement. But I do think Sony is being a bit more careful with these live service games, as we see some of them just being canceled with Bend and Blue Point. While that apparently was like not full live service, it was multiplayer-based God of War, but not like, oh, here's a roadmap, here's live service, here's battle passes. But Fairgames, it's, I'm really curious when this one launches, is what I'll say, because I need to see how it ends up re-emerging from how it was first shown, because based on how far out it's been now since it was initially shown, and now we're waiting until 2026, I'd like to think that they read the room and maybe went back to, not square one, but sort of figured out ways that they could improve it. And a lot of that, to be honest, probably has to do with the look and kind of the style that they were giving off, because it was very, very Ubisoft-like. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Okami 2, as we did get some new information specifically around the engine that the game will be built on. We can see this posted up by IGN, where they say, following the announcement of a sequel to cult favorite Okami at the Game Awards last year, fans immediately began speculating that the game would be developed in RE Engine thanks to Capcom's return as publisher. IGN can now exclusively confirm that's the case after speaking with several leads on the project. So this is very, very intriguing. RE Engine has been, I'll say, stretching its legs a bit more since the days of using it for Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 7. Sure, it was like in Devil May Cry 5, and we did see it in even Capcom Arcade's Second Stadium, or Monster Hunter Rise, or Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, Dragon's Dogma 2, and even Ghost Trick. But Okami. So, the first Okami, decades ago on the PS2, had that water paint, that watercolor look to it, and it was awesome. And I'm trying to think, okay, will RE Engine be able to maybe give a next generation look to that? I mean, I think so. The RE Engine is such an interesting setup for these developers, because it's optimized well, like it runs well for the most part. And Dragon's Dogma 2 is like kind of weird with it. But you see the different Resident Evil games that come out with RE Engine. It's very impressive. It looks awesome. It runs well. And I'm thinking Okami 2 is still going to keep that same essence of the art style as we saw with the trailer, but then be able to tap RE Engine, might be able to work to speed up development since it's a well-known engine within Capcom, and will give it, really, I think, just new life, like something different for it to try to accomplish that Okami look. And this is really cool. I can't wait to see the first real screenshots or just visuals of it in game. It's going to be something, I think it's going to be something that looks incredible. So really looking forward to that, even though we're probably a couple years off even from that early point. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, have you played Rainbow Six Siege before? 66% say no, 34% say yes. And Siege is a fun game. It can, I'm sure, be aggravating for people who aren't like interested in really diving into the meta for a first-person tactical competition shooter like that. And that's the biggest thing, is it really worked its way into the esports scene. So There are some matches you'll get into and people are just ridiculous at the game, sure. But, I mean, you can also have a lot of fun with friends just trying to hold down a base and fortify it while people are blowing holes in the walls and stuff and exploding through. There are some really fun series of events that I've experienced just playing with some of the guys from the Spawncast like a year ago, or we really played it a lot. And I just keep saying I'd like to go back to Rainbow Six Siege when they have a new game or like a sequel or a follow-up. I guess that's kind of what this is. We'll find out next month, but I'll be keeping an eye on it because I wouldn't mind going back with something fresh, and maybe that's what Rainbow Six Siege X will end up being. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Loomdoom. It says, I'm glad Sony wants to make more family-friendly games like Astro. It'd be nice if Sony could go back to the diversity of titles they had in the PS1 and PS2 era. Not every PlayStation first-party title needs to be a T or M-rated third-person action-adventure game. Yeah, that's true. And the thing with that is if you can get a really good general audience game out there that has a mascot that really figures it out, and all of a sudden, I'm not gonna say you're gonna have a Mario, but you sort of build up this character like an Astrobot. And the general audience thing is important for Sony, as well as their T and their M-rated games that are like these high production value things that they put the PlayStation Studios logo in front of proudly. Having these games to balance it out that can add just diversity to your lineup, I think is very important. It can break up what people were saying as the Sony formula, when you would have the over-the-shoulder cinematic action adventure style game, and then, oh wait, there's Astrobot. Okay. And now we go back to the third person over. You see what I mean? It at least works to, I don't say break up monotony, but break up the expected release, the expected showing. Sometimes it's fun to have an Astrobot in there, a nice little curveball to keep things fresh. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed last week's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to see a PlayStation 2 dashboard that we never got in the US back in the 2000s, but now it's actually been translated and fully playable. I did a video exploring this. I'll leave it right below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.